Two anonymous lovers meet in a cafe. He tells her the story of the planet Zychron and of the city Sakiel Norn. In Sakiel Norn, children weave elaborate rugs, causing them to go blind at a young age. After becoming blind, they are sold into becoming the blind assassins. Iris Chase Griffin recounts the story of her life. Iris and her younger sister, Laura, grow up in a village with a privileged life because their grandfather opened up a button factory. They play and study together, but hate their schoolwork, torturing their teachers in protest. Mrs. Chase is ill, and Renee, the housekeeper, is keeping a close eye on her. The girls are playing under the table while the adults talk. Renee is very concerned about Mrs. Chase's health. All of a sudden, Mrs. Chase collapses on the floor. Renee shoos the girls from the room and then cares for Mrs. Chase. Later, the girls discover something strange outside of Mother's room. Laura says, "It looks like a little kitten," but it really was their mother's stillborn baby. After the funeral, Mr. Chase goes to the tower and drinks to cope with the pain of losing his wife. Mr. Chase then takes Iris to town for soda, which is an uncommon thing for him to do. Iris remembers her mother telling her something before she died. Underneath it all, your father loves you. The two anonymous lovers meet again in secret. He continues telling the story of Sakiel Norn. The main character is the blind assassin who is hired to murder the sacrificial mute girl. The blind assassin sneaks into the girl's chamber where she awaits for the Lord of the Underworld. Then the woman says that she must leave because they will be wondering where she is. Mr. Chase tells Iris that it's her job to take care of her little sister Laura after their mother's death. After the funeral, Laura spends a lot of time in her mother's fur coat, and following her father's advice, Iris does her best to comfort her sister. Mr. Chase continues to lock himself in the tower to drink for increasing periods of time. No one is allowed to disturb him when he's in the tower. To escape from their home life, Laura and Iris often walk around Port Ticonderoga, and one day they decide to walk along the river. Suddenly, Laura falls into the water. Iris jumps in to save her, but secretly she thinks she saw Laura jump in on purpose. When Iris asked Laura why she did it, Laura says, "So God would let Mother be alive again." At the annual Button Factory picnic, Mr. Chase uses the phrase "grounds for optimism" 4 times in his speech. and didn't use reason to be pleased once. Everyone knows it is a difficult time. Laura and Iris meet a young man named Alex Thomas. The local journalist, Elwood Murray, snaps a photo of the trio and writes a disturbing article in the local paper. Mr. Chase invites Richard Griffin and his sister, Winifred Griffin Pryor, to dinner. Laura surprises everyone by inviting Alex Thomas as well. Laura takes photography and hand-tinting lessons from Mr. Murray, and everyone is shocked by her sudden interest. Later, Iris discovers that Laura is tainting various family photos. During her apprenticeship with Mr. Murray, Laura steals the negative of the photo taken at the Button Factory picnic with Alex Thomas. Meanwhile, Iris spends many hours at the Button Factory because Father wants to teach her how to run it.
Because of the bad economy, Mr. Chase has to shut down the Button Factory. Soon after, a fire destroys the factory, and fingers are pointed at the rebel, Alex Thomas. Mounties come to interrogate Laura and Iris about the whereabouts of Alex after the fire, and Laura says she has no idea where he is. The next day, Iris goes to the basement and finds Alex hiding out. To make sure Alex isn't found, Laura and Iris move him up into the attic. They sneak food up to him, making sure that Renee doesn't find out. Alex asks the girls for a pen and some paper to occupy himself in the attic. Though the girls are curious, they do what he asks. After a while, when Alex feels that it is safe enough to move on, he thanks the girls and goes on his way. After Alex leaves, the girls go into the attic to clean up. They find a list of words that he left behind. They have no idea what it means, so Laura takes it and says that she'll burn it. A week later, Laura gives Iris a copy of the picture Elwood Murray took at the picnic. All of Laura was cut out except her hand. Iris often travels on business with her father to Toronto, and though he said he needs her along to take notes, she believes she is there for moral support. On one of their trips to Toronto, Mr. Chase brings up the topic of marriage, hinting that Richard would propose for her later that night. Iris's father makes her feel that marrying Richard would be the only way to save the factories and her family. As Mr. Chase had warned Iris, Richard proposed at dinner later that night, and though she was reluctant, Iris accepted only for the sake of her family. The next day, Winifred takes Iris out to lunch, and though Iris doesn't know what to expect, Winifred immediately begins to change Iris for the sake of her brother's publicity. Laura was frustrated with her sister because she believed that Iris was taking the easy way out. During and after the wedding, Richard and Iris's lives are constantly in the public eye because of Richard's status as a prominent businessman. On her wedding night, Iris says, "I did not yet know that my lack of enjoyment, my distaste, my suffering even, would be considered normal and even desirable by my husband." Every morning at breakfast, Richard and Iris have coffee, and Iris notices that Richard disregards and tears up many telegrams. The man begins the story again. Though he had intended to kill her, the blind assassin and the mute girl immediately fell in love. The blind assassin decides to escape with the mute girl, and when the Lord of the Underworld arrives, the room is empty. The New Girl and the Blind Assassin escape the temple through the hidden tunnels that he knows so well, and to avoid being caught, they escape the city too.
On their honeymoon, Richard and Iris travel around Europe. After their many travels, Iris and Richard return to Toronto. Hours after arriving, Iris receives a phone call from Laura.